Good morning, everyone. This is Vintage Motocross Radio, and I'm your host, Joe Abadi. In a moment, I'll be telling you a bit more about my guest, Rick Sieman. But right now, I want to thank everyone who makes this show possible. Our sponsors, Vitco, keep the ride going. Motion Pro, for all your specialized tools, cables, and controls. Full Circle Racing. Be sure to see Tom McAllister for spokes and rims. Lacing for both modern and vintage bikes. Preston Petty Products. The legend continues. Thank you, Paul Stannard. Golan Industries, one of the best fuel filters money can buy. Check them out online. Racer X Magazine, and of course, Northwest Mako CZ. My guest this morning was on the cutting edge of the dirt bike boom in America in the early 1970s. After meeting with Bill Golden of High Torque Publications, he was given a chance to publish his own magazines, but Bill told him, you get one shot at this 1 month. If it doesn't go, it either lives or dies on that one issue. Within 4 years, he was selling over 270,000 subscriptions a month. His humor, no-nonsense approach to writing and style were anticipated in every issue, and his column, of course, In the Saddle, was just an instant classic. He's a Navy veteran, a sign painter, an art restorer, a magazine editor, a racer, an author, a true Renaissance man. It's my real pleasure this morning to have as my guest Rick Super Hunky Sieman. Rick, thank you for joining me today.
Hey, hi there, buddy. One small correction. When the first,
What's that?
The fourth year of Dirt Bike Magazine is 407,000 circulation.
470,000. Wow.
407,000.
407,000. But was I right about you being an art restorer too?
Oh yeah. Yep. Yes,
yeah.
Indeed.
Well, Rick, let's get right into it. I'm sure the first question everybody wants me to ask is, and you're wearing it right there on your shirt, how did you get the name Super Hunky?
Well, I'm a licensed member of the Dirt Diggers Motorcycle Club. We used to put on hope. And we used to go every 2 weeks to a place out on Pacific Coast Highway and have our meetings and drink beer and talk about, all the things that you talk about at meetings. And then some of us would, instead of going home, would go to a place in west Los Angeles called the Sneaky Fox. The Sneaky Fox is a place with pool tables, things like that. The stuff you had to have. And they're great burgers and $5 pitchers of beer. Pitchers of beer were huge, enormous pitchers of beer for $5. So we walked in there one time, and the bartender said, "Well, you guys here for the arm wrestling contest?" We said, "We had no idea there was an arm wrestling contest." He said, "Yeah. What's the cost of entry is the cost of a pitcher of beer." I said, "Okay." So everybody says, "Rick, go for it," because I used to be a weightlifter. Well, this is back in, way back then, long time ago, 67.
Would you figure late? Oh, this is in the late 50s?
Late 60s.
Oh, late 60s. Okay.
Late 60s.
Okay.
And so we sat down to start the arm wrestle, and I won 70 pitchers of beer for the club, in our club's name, for Dirt Diggers Motorcycle Club. 70 pitchers of beer. I beat 70 guys. No problem. So anyway, we're getting ready to leave, and a bunch of guys from the UCLA football team walked in, and a big 300-pounders. And hey, we came here for the arm wrestling. And the bartender said, "Well, sorry, it's all over with the guy over there, Rick. He just won all the beers." "Oh, what kind of bull is this?" "Well," he said, "go ask him." So I said, "Okay, who wants to arm wrestle?" He says, "I do." So they all sat down. We decided to go for it again. They all put the money for pitchers of beer. And back then, football players did not lift weights. They were big legs and all, but their arms, as far as I'm concerned, they were just pencil arms,
Okay, yeah.
Seriously. So I got 7 of them, put them all down real easy. And the last guy was about a 330-pounder. I went, holy smoke. So this guy looked strong. He big arms and everything. So just for the heck of it, the guy put his hand above ours, and when the hand goes down, you're supposed to go. When the guy's hand moved like that, I went right away. I got the guy and put him down before he knew what happened. He says, you cheated. I said, "Hey, what if I buy you a pitcher of beer?" "Okay." So I went to the club meeting the next week. And there in the club meeting, they had this shirt made for me. And it said Super Hunky. on his shirt. And they said, you gave the club 70 plus pitchers of beer on a credit. Therefore, you're our hero. And therefore, you are now Super Hunky. And that's how,
you got the name.
That's how you got the name.
Unbelievable. And Rick, you know what? Let's talk about your weightlifting for a second. Did that begin while you were in the Navy, or what inspired you to do that? Why were you lifting weights?
I went in the Navy as a 120-pound guy, typical 17-year-old kid. Okay. And I walked over to the gym one day with big, beautiful gym there in Florida. Beautiful, where I was stationed. And I ran around the gym a little bit, and I worked on the trampoline a little bit. And then I saw this guy in the corner, a little small guy, short guy, little sweatpants on, did these huge weights. I went, holy smoke. And I walked over and said, would you teach me how to lift weights? He says, no. I said, why is that? He says, because people don't stick with it. I said, I'll stick with it. He says, no, I won't waste my time on people who won't follow through. I said, okay. I said, okay, tell you what if I do everything that you do during your workout? We teach me a little bit then? He said, you'll do everything I'm going to do? I said, yeah. He said, yeah. He said, okay, you do everything I do with whatever weight you can handle, and I'll teach you something. So he did a whole workout. I mean, he did lat things, curls, the whole works. And I followed through whatever I could handle. When he got there, he said, okay. He said, let's see if you can deadlift that. So there on the floor was 315 pounds loaded up on an Olympic bar. And he said, let's see you deadlift that. Well, I deadlifted. He couldn't believe it. 120 pounds back then to do 315. So I had a natural strength. So anyway, so from that day forth, my old buddy Tom, taught me how to lift weights. And I transferred again to Norman, Oklahoma, to a Navy school. And I got to where I weighed 170 pounds, and I got to be very, very strong, kept lifting weights. And I got to the point in weightlifting where I became very, very good. I was number 3 in the United States in 198 pound class. And I did a 270 press, a 260 snatch, and a 315 clean and jerk.
And you weighed how much at that point?
198.
Wow.
That's a middle heavyweight. And I was a regional champion in the United States. I was state champion a number of times, and regional champion also.
Rick, let's talk a little bit about your career in the Navy. I think you went into the Navy in around 55 or so. What did you do in the Navy? How long were you in, and where did you travel?
I went to 58 to 62, and I was on an aircraft carrier Enterprise, the first nuclear carrier in the world. And I shouldn't tell you this. I may have to kill you for this, but the ship was a quarter of a mile long, over a quarter of a mile long, and we did 55 knots. Do you know how fast that is? That's like 57 miles an hour, and it was over a quarter mile long. 7,600 men on board. Unbelievable. That's one of the best experiences of my life. Was 6 months on board that ship.
And in those 6 months, where did you travel to?
Mostly Guantanamo Bay. A little story has nothing at all to do with dirt bikes, but has something to do with the world record rum and cokes. And there's a place in Guantanamo Bay called the White Hat Club, and you could go in there and get a bar. You get bar and burgers and whatever, and a beer was 10 cents, and a mixed drink was 25 cents. So you can go in there with $3, and you can get pretty much torn up. So I walked in a bar one time with my buddy Bob, and the guy's a cowboy from Montana. And bartender said, "What do you have?" Bob said, "What do people drink down here in Cuba?" He said, "Well, rum and cokes." He said, "Okay, I'll have a couple of those." He said, "We want to try for the world record." And Bob said, "What's the world record?" The guy says, "Well, there's 22. There's the guy's picture right there." He said he drank 22 rum and cokes. And he got his picture taken, and you get this great trophy. You can tell it was 99-cent trophy, right? He says, "So if you want to try to match that record or beat that record, go for it." So it's, "Ricky, you try it?" I said, "Let's go for it." So we all get 10 rum and cokes each in front of us. And about the fifth rum and coke, I went, oh, I could barely walk. And my buddy pouring him down. He's just pouring things down because he's from Montana and he was a heavy drinker. So by this time, he had a crowd around us, so like 50 people. Yeah, cheered us on, whatever. And I said, that's all for me. So he finished my drinks. Then he ordered 10 more himself. He got 20 drinks at this point. And anyway, so he drinks the 20, and the bartender says, 2 more and you tie. He says, give me 5 more. He says, you're joking. He says, no, he says, I'm not going to smoke the record. I'm going to destroy the record. It won't exist anymore. So bartender says, okay, these are out of the house. He brings 5 more rum and cokes, and he drinks 2 of them real fast. Drinks the third one to the record. Everybody cheers and claps. He drinks 2 more. He says, okay, so I get my trophy now? He says, no. He said, you have to walk in your own power back to the Liberty launch to take you back to the carrier. And it's 100 yards from the White Hat Club to the Liberty launch.
Right.
So he had to walk in his own power. I couldn't see how he could even walk.
How many did he drink, Rick?
How many what?
How many rum and cokes did he finish?
25.
Holy mackerel.
I drank 5. I was feeling it. Excuse me. So he drank 25 for the world record. So we had to go under his own power. So we walked out of the White Hat Club, and we had to go 100 yards under his own power. So he's walking. He's walking like this, but he walked over to the Liberty launch. The Liberty launch is like a 40-foot boat, and in the boat, he goes, "Okay, I'm here." So the bartender gives him a little cheap trophy, a little 99-cent trophy, and he takes his picture, puts it up on a board, and puts his name up and everything. And he goes to get in the Liberty launch. He looks at the Liberty launch, and there in the bottom of the Liberty launch is about 6 inches of water with vomit, and people have been puking all day, going back and forth. So he gets in there and he goes, and he throws his lunch there too. So we get to the Enterprise, and he can't even go up the stairs. There's long stairs up to the Enterprise. So we get to the Enterprise. He says, "Rick, you got to get me up here." So I put him over my shoulder, and I go to the top, and the officer of the deck is the OOD, and I says, "Request permission to come aboard, sir." He says, "Wait a minute, sailor. Is that man drunk?" I said, "No, sir. He just had something to eat. It was bad." He says, "I don't know. I smell alcohol on him." He said, "Oh no, he's maybe he had a drink or two, but it was just bad food." He said, "Let me see his wallet." So Bob goes to get his wallet like this, and he drops it over the side of the boat. And he says, "You dirty, rotten bastard." And he jumps over the side of the boat after his wallet. He's 100 feet up in the air. And he goes after, and I go, "What?" And meanwhile, the Liberty launch and the boat are like this. And he goes right between the two and hits the water and grabs his wallet. And I go, "What a crazy guy is this?" And the guy in the Liberty launch pulled him in a boat. We got him up to the top again. And the officer of the deck says, "Hey, he says, "You threw my wallet in the water." He says, "You dirty son of blah, blah, blah." And the officer of the deck says, "Get this man out of here. Please get him out of here. I don't want to see him again. Go away." So that's the story. That's the story of the rum and cokes.
So, Rick, you're in the Navy around, I think it was 1956. You buy a Triumph TR6. That was your first bike. And shortly after that, I guess you met Neil Shakwa and another guy named Hydraulic Jack, who introduced you to the Dirt Diggers. How soon after that did you begin actually racing off-road in the desert?
Well, what I did, I used to race with my buddy Tom, and I had a little shop in Santa Monica out behind where I lived. And I used to do, because I was a sign painter, I got sick and tired of painting signs. And so all these shops in Santa Monica were old antiques and stuff like that. Dozens of these shops. And they all had statues and little paintings, things that needed repair. So I made some cards up called the Craftsman. And I went to all these places, and I had all kinds of business coming in. I mean, all these people would bring all these damaged pieces as far as I'm concerned, junk to me, and I'd fix them and charge them money for them. So I'm out in my shop one day, and on my left-hand side, I had all my Triumph, and me and the other side had my shop. So it's just a back street. So just going down this back street was a station wagon with a couple of bikes in the back. And the guy goes, "Oh, stop here." He says, "I see a guy with an obvious." So it turns out it's hydraulic Jack. And he's driving to his shop down the street. And there's a little garage. So he says, "Hey, you a dirt biker?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "What do you think that knobby's on the back for?" So he said, I talked a while. He says, "Well, we're going to come here and drink some cheap wine. You want some?" I said, "Sure." So he said, "Why don't we stop and get some?" He said, "It's on me. Don't worry about it. I got plenty of it." So we got to his shop about 4 blocks up. And there is about 6 refrigerators full of cheap wine. It's really cheap wine. It's called Thunderbird.
Thunderbird, sure.
It was like 89 cents a bottle for a gallon bottle, whatever it was. And we sat there and drank this Thunderbird. And Jack says, if you put a lot of ice in it, it kills the taste. So we drank a whole lot of Thunderbird. And they invited me to the Dirt Diggers because Nate was a prospective and Jack was a member. So they invited me to come over to the club meeting and see what it was like. And that's when I went to the club meeting. That's when I became a dirt digger.
When did you actually start racing, Rick? Where were some of the first races you entered with the diggers?
Oh, well, I raced a lot of races before that, just local, mostly desert racing. But okay. I started racing motocross more in the dirt diggers. In fact, after a while, I got to the point where the Triumph wouldn't cut anymore. I picked up a Greaves, the usual kind of crap that we had back then, and $300 bikes, and had fun go racing. Did a whole lot of racing every weekend.
I read where you've raced over 1,600 times, and I know a lot of the viewers here, the listeners today, they all have a big, always the big question, it seems, when your name comes up is Blackwater and the 760 Mako. Can we talk about that? How did that bike come about? How did you do that day in that race? Tell us about the 760 Mako and Blackwater.
Well, I was really tight with Mako because I love the bikes real well. I did really good on them. And I got real tight with them. Consequently, my Makos were as good as the worst bikes. I'd have a 440 Mako with magnesium this and magnesium that, and it just everything. The bike's so good, it was scary good. So anyway, I got this call from Dave Coombs to race the Blackwater 100. He said, "If you don't race it, you're a pussy." I said, "Oh, really?" He said, "Yeah, it's the toughest race in the world. Not just the toughest race in the United States. It's the toughest race, period." He said, "You can finish this race, you're a real racer. If you can't finish it, you're nothing." I said, "Oh, thank you very much." So I call up Mako. I says, "I hear there's a lot of mud in this race, a whole lot of mud. What do you think you might have?" And the guy says, "Well, we just got this bike in. They made 6 of these bikes for the whole world. 6 what? 760 Makos." I said, "Why'd they make them?" He said, "They have a 760 class for the ISDT, and they made 6 of these Makos for that class. And they just put headlights on them, and that was it." And they went ahead and did pretty good at it. So we have a 760 laying here doing nothing, and nobody's going to buy it. We're not allowed to sell it. So if you want to race that, we'll bring that to you." I said, "Okay." So I show up at the Blackwater 100 in Davis, West Virginia, and there is a 760 Mako. And I go, "Whoa, holy smoke. This is something special." And people are standing around pointing at it and looking at 760. So I said, "Well, let's start it up." He said, "Well, you can't start it." I said, "What do you mean you can't start it? How am I supposed to ride it?" He said, "Well, you can't start it cold." I said, "Well, it's got a big carburetor on like any other Mako ever made. I can start it. So go ahead, have fun." So I took a little big carburetor and kicked, wouldn't start. I said, "Okay, what's the drill?" He said, "We push start you, and then it starts easy." I said, "You're joking." He said, "No." So I got on a bike, they give you a push, go 20 feet, thing fired up, I warmed it up, shut it off, kicked right over. But you couldn't start the thing by kicking it when it was cold. Oh, Jesus, this is really weird. But it had unbelievable torque. Unbelievable torque. At 1200 RPM, at 1200 RPM, it's 30 horsepower. 30 horsepower at 1200 RPM. It only turned 5200, unlike most Makos. But it only made like 50 horsepower at the most. But it had torque like you would not believe. I mean, you could be in like third gear and go 2 miles an hour and go turn the throttle. It just pull right, just pull. So, all right, can't beat that. The only thing what they didn't tell me was this: it only got 15 miles out of a tank of gas, and the course loop at the Blackwater 100 was 25 miles, 4 100-mile loops.
Okay.
And they didn't tell me they'd only get 15 miles out of the stock tank. I didn't know that. So I took off, and I was doing really good, quite good. And sure enough, it ran out of gasoline, and I had to find some gas off a guy, and I gave him $5 for gas. He got me in. Second loop, check this out. I'm going on the second loop. It started raining. It started pouring, absolute pouring rain, and so much so the water was coming down to the tree branches, and it shorted out. The water came down and hit the kill button switch. It shorted it out. So what you do is when it happens, you pull the thing out. You pull the switch out on top, so it'll start. Okay, you bypass the switch. Except by that time, the motor had cooled off, and I couldn't kickstart the thing.
Oh.
So I had to push the bike up a hill, about 100-yard hill, a muddy hill, and push that down the other side to get it going again. That was my story with the 760 Mako. So I didn't race it ever again. It was amazing to ride. It was truly great, but it wasn't built for anyone. It didn't make any common sense whatsoever, but it was fun.
Let's talk about a 501 Mako, Rick. Do you remember a certain bike that had a twin carb?
Yeah. My buddy C.H. Wheat made that one, but I had several 501 Makos, but I had one with a 44 Mikuni on it. It was just unbelievable. 76 horsepower, 231 pounds. And I won 14 races in a row at the Ponderosa with that bike. It was so fast. The Ponderosa had 3 dry lake beds on it. So when I got to the dry lake bed, no matter where I was, I had a no bullshit 130 mile an hour dirt bike. Everybody else out there was 80, 85. That'd be about it. They gear up 1 tooth. I was geared up to the moon. I had a counter shaft on it the size of a pizza. And I get to the lake bed, and at the end of the lake bed, I'm doing 130 miles an hour, and I was gone. So it was almost like cheating, absolutely like cheating. Never in my life have ever been like that before. In fact, I went out one time with Aki Janssen. You ever heard of him?
Of course.
Aki Janssen came down to the office, and like a lot of Europeans, he said he would love to go see the desert. I said, why is that? He says, well, there's no place to ride in Europe. He said, if you don't have a friend who has a track or a farmer that you can go to his land, he said, you don't just put your bike in the truck and just as an empty lot somewhere. There's no land in Europe. Everybody owns something. He said, but we're here in the desert. You can just go out and have fun. I said, yeah, I'll take you out to the desert. So I went to my house, and I said, here, well, grab a test bike. So he took a Kawasaki 250, and I took my 501 Mako. My trick 501 Mako went to the Ponderosa, and we went to the Ponderosa, and we did put a lap in, and we stopped to clean our goggles. He said, are you going to race the Nationals? I said, what do you mean, Nationals? He says, well, you're very fast. I said, hey, this is my home course. You're on a piece of crap Kawasaki 250. I'm on the best 501 Mako imaginable. I said, and this is my home course. I said, I'm an intermediate. I said, no, I can't do it. But he thought because, I was very fast out there, I was going to be good enough to race with those guys. Not a chance.
Hey, Rick, do you remember a story about you? And I think it was Walsink and maybe Carl Crank went up to Ponderosa, and Carl was on some ratty ass XR or XL 350 with mirrors.
Oh my goodness. I can't believe that. And yet the guy was so fast, you could not believe it.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. There's a thing. Before I got to where I got pretty fast at the Ponderosa, I was reasonably fast. One day I was down at Valerian Cycle Sales. I ran into a guy who had a 2-digit number plate. When you have a two-digit number plate, you're an expert. You look at it, you're my hero. You're a hero. So I said, okay, you're a real fast guy. He says, yeah. He says, you got some overall wins. He says, yeah. I said, what's the secret to going really fast on hoops? He said, the whole secret to going fast on hoops is to just get to the point where the bike is literally just kissing the top of the hoops, and you're absolutely out of control, but you're going so fast that you just float, you kiss it, just skim across the top. That's the whole key. Oh, holy smoke! And it actually worked. I did it one time. When I let it all hang out completely, it scared me half to death. You can do it, but those guys who are that good and race at that speed, the top pros,
Right.
Are amazing. I mean, it's very lucky throughout my years to have gone riding with those pros, guys like that.
But do you remember when I think it was Carl Crank, when he put the mirrors down on that XL 350 and started to ride, went over the bars, and the bolt from the mirror went through his neck?
Oh, Jesus. How'd you remember that? Wow. That goes back.
Yeah, it does.
He's amazing. We figured we took him to the hospital in Palmdale. Yeah. Wow.
But he got like 37 stitches. And then he came back and rode again.
Yeah, he was a pretty amazing guy. Got to give him that.
Hey Rick, did you once try to get to ride in the international 6-day trials in Massachusetts, but you couldn't ride for America, so you tried to ride for the country of Tonga?
Well, what happened was Chet Heiberger, who worked for me at the time, we couldn't ride for the U.S. He said, well, there's a whole lot of countries out there that I know that they don't have the very good riders. He said, why don't we try that? So he wrote letters to everyone, including the Vatican. We were going to try to ride for the Vatican also, but apparently they didn't want to do it. But I could just imagine me riding for the Vatican. So that'd be the day Christ would turn over his grave. But we tried and kept all these letters back. And he made some very funny columns about that. And these people answering the letters, why they wouldn't do it. So it got to be a good running joke there.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty interesting. I'm saying, well, it reminded me of the Jamaican bobsled team. There was a movie about the Jamaican guys that had a bobsled.
Yeah, I remember that one. It was good.
So, Rick, let's talk a little bit more about how you got your start in the magazine business. I mean, who spotted your talent as a writer, or how did you get a job at a magazine? You're a painter, you're a motorcycle guy, but you're best known, of course, for being the editor of Dirt Bike. But what door opened for you to get in there and become involved in magazines?
I was in my shop one day in Santa Monica and listening to the lady on the radio. He said, if you're 30 years old, you are not doing what you want to do in life, you're screwed.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? She was absolutely right. I was not 30 yet. I didn't want to do any more statues with broken arms or little stupid paintings that are worth $15. And I said, man, oh man, oh man. So I got the copy of the Los Angeles Times. In the LA Times, it says, wanted aggressive young advertising salesman for new motorcycle magazine. And that magazine was Big Bike, which is a Choppers magazine. At that time, Choppers was a big, big deal. Easy Riders came out and a whole bunch of movies like that. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so I called this guy up. His name is Erwin Spector. And Erwin had a company called Press Reps of California. And what they did, they did things called PI ads. I don't know if you've ever heard of a PI ad. It's called a per inquiry ad. In other words, you can't afford to sell your product. Let's say you have perfume, and you want to sell your perfume in a magazine. So
Yes.
you get a perfume magazine, and they put an ad in for it, but they don't put your address in. They put their address in. So any orders they get, they come to you, and then you give them to the guy, and he pays you per inquiry.
Okay.
So he did a ton of, he did like 70, 75 magazines. And so what happened was Bill Golden had this magazine called Big Bike that was selling like crazy on a newsstand. It was selling like 72% of the press run, but didn't sell. In 6 months, had $400 worth of advertising in it, which is nothing. That doesn't pay for the staples. So anyway, so he hired Urban Spectre to get some ads. And Urban Spectre had all these guys going in suits on in chopper shops to try to sell ads, and naturally they got thrown out. You know how chopper shops are.
Sure.
And so I walked in there and I said, okay, I know my motorcycles. I can sell ads. These guys said, you have no experience whatsoever. What makes you think you can sell ads? I said, because I really know motorcycles. I know the people who know motorcycles. I can talk the language. I can do it. He said, no. We talked. I said, I'll tell you what. I'll make you a deal. You pay me $100 for a week, for half a week. I'll work for half a week. At the end of half a week, I said, I'll either have nothing or I'll come with something. You'll either be a hero or you won't be, or I'll be wrong. And either way, you're taking a chance for $100 and throwing a tick. He said, oh, and throwing a tank of gas. He said, I'll come in at the end of the week. I'll guarantee it. I'll do something. He says, what the hell? So he showed me what a rate card was and what it cost to get an ad. When I went out that week, that Monday, and I worked my butt off. I didn't work half a week. I worked every day. I get up early in the morning. First thing I do, I went to a Harley shop, and I got a Harley T-shirt. It showed Bert Fowle sliding a Harley sideways, and I put cold 6-pack cans of beer in my briefcase, and I walk up to the motorcycle shop. I walk in and say, hey, you make friends? He said, make the best friends around. What's it to you? You know, being a great salesman. I said, well, how would you like to make a friend and when you get around to it? But the guy sends you the money first. And you get around to it, you make it, and then you mail it to him. The guy said, is that legal? I don't want to get in jail anymore. I said, no. I said, it's legal. It's called a mail order. He said, no shit. So the guy went and signed a contract. And then another guy signed a contract. And another guy signed a contract. And at the end of the week, I walked into the inspector's office. He said, well, I said, no, not as good as I thought it was, because I only spent a half a week. So, would you do anything else? Yeah, here you go. I put $3,000 worth of ads down on it. He just about crapped. He just about crapped because, you know, all his guys in suits didn't do anything. And I did $3,000 in 1 week. And all of a sudden, I was the hero. And Bill Golden, he got to meet Bill Golden, the owner, and he took us out to this restaurant in L.A., and the table was right next to Frank Sinatra's table, and so they had menus inside of corridors. The salad was $25, and I couldn't even believe it, you know. But he ordered for everybody, and had a great time. And I went ahead and sold it again the next week after that. Sold more and more, and worked my ass off. I mean, just worked like you couldn't believe, but sold and sold and sold until finally, Bill Golden said, "I want him to come full time here at the office. I don't want him to work for you anymore." And Urban Spectre said, "Okay, no problem." So Urban Spectre got his commission, and I went to work full time for myself, working for Bill Golden. And I got to the point where I had 3 people working for me, and I was making more money back then, dollars for dollars, than I ever made probably in my life. Seriously, I was selling like you could not believe, and it was crazy. It was absolutely crazy.
Rick,
and anyway,
I was wondering if you could confirm the story. Did you also get into an arm wrestling match with Ed Big Daddy Roth over some ads?
I'll get to you on that one. Anyway, one of the things that I did when I was selling ads,
yeah,
they had Big Daddy Roth down here as a guy who people had gone to. So I turned to inspector. I said, I think I'm going to talk to Big Daddy Roth because I wanted to meet the guy anyway. What the hell? He said, don't bother. He says, our guys went there. He said, they got thrown out. I said, well, I'll go talk to him. So I went and talked to Big Daddy Roth. He's a big guy. He's like 6'6", big guy, 300 pounder. And he made the Ratmobile and a whole bunch of things like that, and a bunch of cars for movies and things and bikes. And he also had a magazine called Choppers. It was a digest-sized thing called Choppers. And he sold a whole lot of those. And so I talked to him about trying to buy an ad for Choppers, for Big Bike Magazine. No. I said, what's it going to take for you to buy an ad? He said, beat me at arm wrestling. Fair enough. So we got down on a piece of paper on the floor, went to arm wrestle, and he didn't realize that I was very, very strong. I was very, very strong.
Yeah.
And I beat him. He walked over, he signed a contract for 3 years. Well, check this out. About 6 months later, he got into a terrible divorce. And the judge said that he had to get rid of everything he had to do and give half of it to his wife. So he said, screw it. He says, I owe you guys $3,000 for the ads. Will you take that Choppers magazine and all the photos I have in my files, exchange for that? He said, we'll call it even. So I talked to Bill Golden. I said, hey, guess what? You're now the owner of Choppers magazine if you want to do it. So he said, okay. So all of a sudden, we became Big Bike Choppers. Then I'm selling 2 magazines. And both of them are just doing great. And also, when we got the stuff from Ed Roth, we had boxes of these 4x5 photos, 4x5 classic stuff. I mean, of Hell's Angels, Satan's slaves, original stuff, the real guys back then. And we did stories on those, the real stuff. So the book was a great success. And meanwhile, while we were doing all this stuff, Bill Goldman kept saying, this is fantastic. This is great. I said, well, first, Bill, I want to start a dirt bike magazine. He said, what's a dirt bike? A dirt bike. I said, I tried to explain what a dirt bike was. He had no clue. And I bugged him till finally he said, look, I'll let you make one copy. If it sells good, fine. If it don't sell good, I don't ever hear another word about dirt bikes ever again. Is that clear? I said, well, okay. So I took this one issue of dirt bike and I just cranked it out myself and just put it together somehow. Got it together. I got a call from Bill Golden. Rick, you're going monthly. Why? He says, you sold 78% of the press run. I said, you're joking. Which is unbelievable. See, everyone printed at World Color Press. And World Color Press is the biggest printer in the world.
Uh-huh.
And when you sold a certain percentage, you're a big time guy. If you sold more than 50% of the press run, you were a heavy hitter. And the fact that we were selling in the 70s was just unbelievable.
So how when you say you sold 76%, how does that work, Rick? In other words, who pays you for all? Did they pay you for all those magazines in advance, and then there's an exchange? Yeah. How does that work?
That's what happened. That's what happened with Bill Golden. That's what killed Bill Golden. What happened was if you go to World Color Press and you have, let's say you do 4 or 5 magazines for World Color Press, okay?
Yeah.
And you come out with another magazine, one on bowling, let's say, and you say, I want to do 100,000 copies of Bowling Illustrated. They go, okay. So they give you in advance 50% or 40%, depending on what you deal with, what you work out with them. They advance you how much you will sell. Okay.
Oh, okay.
If you sell more than the percentage, then you get more magazines. You get all the magazines for free. If you sell less than the percentage that they advance, you owe them money. Well, what happened was Bill Golden, when Big Bike and Choppers and Dirt Bike were doing great, he would go back east to these publishers' conventions, and where he used to be a publisher back east, And all these guys back east are telling him, oh, you're doing really great with these magazines, but boy, you do a lot better if they were done professional. Because they would look at dirt bike and they would say, it's not very professional. Of course it was not professional. It was meant for my buddies.
Right.
You know, they talk their language, their way. And, and they kept telling Bill Golden, you got to make it very professional to make it really work. And so he kept hiring all these people, assistant vice president, to come in and try to straighten us out to be more professional. Well, one day I got a call from Bill Golden. He says, come on to my office. So I went in the office, and there was 3 lawyers there and 6 people from Honda, 6 executives from Honda, vice presidents.
Yeah.
And they're standing around her. They're all pissed off. They all got this attitude on their face. And he says, well, Ricky, I want you to listen to him. I said, okay. They said, we picked up a copy of a magazine, a dirt bike magazine, and in there you call this a Jap bike. I said, yeah. So it's not a Jap bike. It's a Honda. You use the word Jap, and that is us a racist name. And you shouldn't say stuff like that because it's really terrible. We find it very offensive. And these lawyers here to see that you don't do this anymore. And all the executives are going, yes, they're nodding their head. They said, so that's what we want your assurances. You won't say Jap bikes anymore. And Bill Golden turns to me and says, well, Rick, what do you think? You're going to say Jap bikes anymore? I said, no problem. I can say Japanese. They said, fine, that's all we want.
Okay.
So we all shook hands. We all walked out of there. About 2 weeks later, I get a call from Jack D. Fox, the newest vice president. He says, okay, Simon, sit down. Okay, what is it, Jack? He says, you got this copy here. You're standing on this Honda 150? Yeah. He said, you said it has Nitto tires on. I said, yeah. He said, well, we all know that Nitto is nothing but a slang term in the Japanese, right? I said, no, Nitto is a tire manufacturer. They make tires. He said, don't bullshit me. He said, we know it. You're just trying to put this thing, you're trying to get this Jap thing in through. I said, no, they are an actual tire manufacturer. They make tires. They sell them for Honda and Yamaha and God knows who else they sell them to. They're not a very good tire. They're very cheap, but they're out there. So you can't tell me that. He says, I want you to go into your office right now and take this copy, remove all mention of that. I said, I can't. He said, well, why not? I said, because I have a Jap typewriter. He said, what? He said, okay, Mr. Smartass. He said, over there, take my Selectric. You know, Selectric was about a 3-foot long typewriter. I don't know if you remember. They weighed about 90 pounds.
Yeah.
He said, take my Selectric. He says, use that. So I took the Selectric with 2 hands. I threw it right through his plate glass window on the 2nd floor. I didn't even think of looking down if there's anybody down walking on the sidewalk, but I threw it right through the window, and I walked out of there. And I figured, well, I'm going to get fired. Well, I walked in the next morning, and my secretary, Judy, she goes, well, guess what? I said, I'm fired. She says, no, Jack D. Fox got fired.
Oh, really?
Really? She said, he got so many editors so mad, they all went to Bill Golden, and Bill fired him. Whew.
So now, at that point, Rick, I mean, are you calling your own shots there for dirt bike, and Golden is listening to everything you've got to say? Or do you have to run everything by him before you do it?
He kept bringing one guy after another guy in there. And every one of these guys, not one of them knew motorcycles. I mean, one guy was an advertising director for a bank, and he didn't know a motorcycle from a toaster. And he's telling me what to do, what not to do. Oh, just unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And we got to the point where I just couldn't take it anymore. I went to my wife and I said, well, I quit. I'm going to quit. She said, you got to do what you got to do. So I walked into Bill Golden. I said, Bill, thank you very much for having me as an editor, but I got to leave. Okay, what do you want? How much money do you want? I said, no, it's not the money. It's $100 a week more under the table. No, can't do it. $200 under the table. No, I don't want it. He said, I'll get you another truck and 300 underneath the table. No, he couldn't understand it. That's why I went to motorcycle. Because Bill, that motorcycle, there's a guy named guy used to work for a dirt bike. His name is Sven Crossan. And he said, if you go to motorcycle, they're hurting real bad. If you can do what you think you can do, they'll pay you good money because you have a great reputation as an editor. And they'll leave you alone. I said, that's all I want. So I went there, I talked to Ed Sniff and Munch, the guys who own the place, and worked out a deal. They made good money. And I took over a motorcycle, which was doing really, really bad. It was only 18%. It was terrible. And the first issue we sold like in the 60s. So before we knew it, the thing was over a couple 100,000. It did real good. So
how many years were you with Modern Cycle?
6 years.
Did you go back to dirt bike after that?
Yeah, what happened was they wanted us, the guys who did challenge publications, that was challenge publications, they said that because it was dirt bikes only, we were limited to dirt bike advertising. And they thought they'd get more of street bike advertising too if they made it a general interest magazine. I said, I don't want to do a general interest magazine. I have no interest in doing it. I don't care about four-cylinder Hondas and things of that nature. I just don't care. They don't. I have no interest whatsoever. And they said, well, we can't do anything. We're going to do it that way. I said, well, okay, I'll see you around. I said, no. Don't go anywhere. You're a good editor. We want you to do our car books and our bicycle magazine. 3 magazines. I said, you want me to do them? I said, yeah. And I'll just be my own boss. He says, yeah. Okay. So they made Ned Owens in charge of motorcycle. Within 6 months, they died. Just completely died. And I took over Rod Access, Street Machine, and a whole bunch of one-shots. You know what one-shots are, right?
No.
One-shot. Well, like you do a thing called the best of, or the calendar stuff, or things that the best of Rod Action for a year, or that's on 32 Fords or something like that. And I did a whole bunch of these books. Well, I needed to get stuff done, and I hired Paul Clipper, who was a photographer, and he worked in a photo lab. And Paul Clipper was turned out to be a great guy, a super duper guy. Seriously, we'd get up in the morning and we'd go and we'd finish the magazine by the late afternoon that day. And the way we would do it was this. Challenge Publications would send photographers out to swap meets, to car meets and truck meets. And they would go with 100 rolls of film, and they would take these sheets of paper and they find out a real good looking car or truck, and they say, okay, we're going to put this in here and take photos of the thing. And the guy fill out this form, and they put it in a big brown bag and put it in our drawers. We had file cabinets full of brown folders with bits and trucks and bits and cars and information of the guys that did it, what they did and how much it cost for this, and where they had this done and that done. And all we had to do was yank out half a dozen envelopes. And here's a half dozen stories right there. Then we make up the stories about letters and stuff like that. We fake those out, and we just fake them out. And we turn out to be. We crank this out like you would believe. Seriously, at 4 o'clock, 3:30, 4 o'clock, we'd be done for the day, and we just go back and drink beer and eat hamburgers after that.
And that was it, huh? Tell me about you mentioned you had some other magazines going too. I know you were with Mini Cycle BMX Action.
Yeah,
what was happening there? Because I want to know more about Scott Hybrink and how you hired this 21-year-old kid to run a national magazine. How did that work out? Scott
Hybrink is a great photographer. He could not write his way out of a glad bag.
He could be watching. I hope you don't mind.
It's okay. He can watch all he wants. He's a great photographer. He's one of the best photographers, period. But as far as writing goes, Scott, if you're watching, you're a terrible writer. Anyway, so I just needed somebody. I had no interest whatsoever in doing the bicycle magazine, the minicycle VMX magazine, and he wanted some work to do, and I hired him to do that. I just turned him loose on him, let him go have fun. But he did okay. The thing sold 53% steadily. It made a few bucks. Never set the world on fire, but never lost money either. Which is all I wanted at Challenge Publishing, a magazine that made money. And they had magazines like you wouldn't believe. Things about trains and model cars and model airplanes and just anything you can think of. They had like 15 different magazines.
Now, Rick, let's get back to dirt bike for a second. You always had some interesting test riders there. Some famous people, some not so famous. How do you come up with picking test riders like Jim Mercier or George Wegner or somebody like that?
Well, those guys were editors mostly. The test riders I had, the guys I really, really liked when working with were guys like John DeSoto.
Okay.
A super duper guy. One of the greatest people that I've ever met in my life. And he was probably the greatest natural athlete I've ever met, ever heard of. When he quit racing motocross, he decided to take tandem surfing. Okay? A tandem surfing, you'd have to take somebody with you. And he had a niece that was like 90 pounds. She was real athletic. And he won the tandem surfing championship. He won it repeatedly. I mean, he'd never done before in his life. He just did it. He was a wrestler, a champion wrestler. And anything the guy would try, he would do good. But he was amazing, a fantastic rider. One time I was out on a course at Indian Dunes, and on the internet, not the Indian Shadowlands course, and the course was burnt dry. It was absolutely baked dry. There hadn't been water on or anything for a week. And you can see black marks going into the corners where people hit their brakes. So I was out there, and we had a 230 Montesa that was just sort of on the slow side, but had just enough power for that kind of a course. In other words, you could full throttle it, it would just spin the wheel enough that we could go and not get in trouble, but you'd go forward. So I went around the course, and I was going faster than I've ever gone in my life on that kind of a course. I went, damn, this is pretty cool. So I'm going to this corner, just going to the corner like crazy. And I get tapped on my left shoulder. It's John DeSoto on a Hodaka Subarat. He taps me on the shoulder. I went, Jesus. And then you realize just how good the really, really good riders really are. It takes your breath. In fact, if you don't mind, a little story.
No, I don't mind at all. That's why we're here, Rick. Well, I'm enjoying it. And by the way, Rick, Scott Highbrink wants to know if you are on medical marijuana.
No, I'm not.
Okay. He just asked. I saw it popped up here on the screen. I thought I would ask you that question. Scott Highbrink.
No. Anyway, a Saturday Saddleback, you'd go there at Saturday Saddleback, and you get 2 45-minute motos, which is really fantastic. I don't know if you've ever been to Saddleback Park. It was a really,
I have not.
Really nasty, tough track. And a lot of pros would go there to get the 2 45-minute motos in just to get in shape. So they use Saturday Saddleback just for training. So I went there to Saturday Saddleback with my Mako. And so we had a writers meeting. And the guy who did the writers meeting says, okay, we have 43 experts here. He says, and we have 2 intermediates. He says, Rick, Simon, you're an intermediate. He said, George something. He said, you're an intermediate. I said, whoa. I'm a novice. He said, no. He says, you got 14 wins in a row. You're no longer a novice. Right. You're an intermediate. You'll go with the pros. You'll be scored separately. so you won't be scored as a pro, but you go with the pros. Is that clear? You're no longer a novice. You got that? Okay, George, you got? Yes, I got it. So I went, oh man. So I said, well, as long as I'm going to go start, I might as well get the best start imaginable. So the starting gate, I backed way off the starting gate, way back, as far as I could go. In the second gear, this 440 Mako, which is everything to do to the Mako. And the gate goes like that. And just as soon as I crossed the gate, went to third gear right away, and a long uphill, about 130, 40 yards. And I get to the top of the hill, I made this left-hand turn, and I get like a 6 length lead. And I said, why haven't I done this years ago? By the time I get to the bottom of the hill, I was in 35th. They came by me so fast, they almost ripped my shirt off. I didn't realize just how truly good those guys really were. And
yeah.
I've always been a good rider, but I've never been at that level where I could ride like they did.
Yeah. Hey, Rick, I want to talk about some of the testings and shootouts you did with dirt bike. You guys were painfully honest with some of your reviews on a lot of stuff. I wanted to know that if you were ever so honest with one of the bikes or one of the aftermarket products, that the manufacturer of the product or the bike came back and said, impossible, it can't be that bad. Were you ever too honest and a manufacturer or an advertiser got pissed off and said, that's it, we're not doing this anymore?
Yeah. And in fact, it happened with Honda. We did a real bad test on a Honda. It was a Honda 350 something 4-stroke. I can't remember which one it was, but it was 400 pounds. It bottomed out real easy. It didn't have any suspension worth a damn. The horsepower was terrible, and we gave it a terrible write-up. So Honda came in and says, well, guess what? We're not going to advertise it anymore. We're yanking all our advertising. And they removed all their advertising. They said, that's it. Well, but guess what? Right after that, they got this really, really good Honda, and we did a great story on it. And all of a sudden, all the advertising is back. All of a sudden, they were the heroes again. But
exactly. You know what, Rick? I mean, I remember a lot of those magazines, and I'm wondering if that was the one you actually took a picture of a pig, a real live pig with the bike.
Yeah.
Is that the one?
What we did is we had this Honda, which was a piece of crap. I turned to can't remember who the heck it was. He says, well, I got this friend of mine. It's a pig, Newhall. So his name is Dolly the Wonder Pig. And we took the picture of the pig right next to the Honda, and we had the Honda saying oink. And that was our cover shot. Or not a cover, our lead photo. Oh, yeah. The Honda went nuts. They went absolutely nuts over that one. They went berserk.
Now, I've got another question here, Rick. Of course, I'm not asking you to name names, but I'm wondering if there was any type of graft or corruption from anybody who tried to give you a product to review and maybe tried to sweeten the deal for you, so to speak. Anybody ever come at you a little?
How about a whole lot of times?
Really?
A whole lot of times. People come up to us. For example, we were doing a test on oils. We did a test on 2-stroke oils. Yeah. And we had people come up to us and ask to be given a higher rating on it. And the ones that came out really bad in the 2-stroke oil test came out really bad. It absolutely crippled their business too. We did that 2-stroke oil shootout, and you cannot believe. I think we sold almost 100% of the press run. Almost 100%. And wow. People couldn't believe that we would do something like that. And we did stuff. We actually took the oils. We had a laboratory test the oils. Just test the oils in a real test. And it was unbelievable. And then we did chain lube shootout, like some of the dry chain lubes. it was so bad that the chains would start getting hot, too hot that you'd almost see them turn red just on our machine. So we did a lot of stuff like that. And the main thing that piss people off, we started doing things. So when you brake, we do a test on a motorcycle.
Yeah.
We do something in a section called when you brake. We'd have all the parts prices you would normally run through on a motorcycle, like shift levers, things like that, shocks, stuff like that. When you brake it, what would it cost? What would it cost? For example, we found out, for example, a shift lever on a Yamaha would be one price. Be the identical shift lever on a Honda would be another different price. It'd be the same shift lever by the same company. And we point stuff like that out, and people get pissed off. They really would get pissed.
Yeah.
But we tried to talk like we're talking to our friends. For example, I invented this phrase called conversational journalism.
What's it called? Say it again.
Conversational journalism.
Okay.
And what it was like this. Let's say you went out and you bought a brand new DT1, Yamaha DT1.
Yeah.
And your buddy comes up to you and say, well, Rick, what do you think about this new DT1 compared to the old one? I go, well, the fork tubes are 17 millimeters longer and this and that and the other. And he said, no. I want to know what it's like. You pick up a magazine, a normal magazine, they would say stuff like, this is 17 millimeters longer. That's 12 millimeters shorter, so forth, so forth. But they wouldn't tell you what it felt like, what it was like after things sat for 3 weeks to start easy. Was it fun to ride? You know, we got right down to what it was like a friend, like conversational journalism from a friend. Yes. That was the whole name of the game. That's what made dirt bike work.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, there was a big dust up. There was a change. Bill Golden was, of course, getting the advances on the magazines. It wasn't working out. Bill had Bob, I'm sorry. Golden. So he's got to sell out to Roland Hines.
No. Here's what happened. Bill Golden got so much in a hole with World Color Press.
Okay.
I'm not sure who you believe, but between $5 and $8 million in a hole. And what he would do, Bill Golden would go to Vegas like crazy. He had a home in Vegas and a home in LA. And he would go to Vegas and he would go out and gamble. So here he'd be getting all this advance money on magazines. All right. He'd go out and gamble. He'd drop $30,000, $40,000 without even blinking. And consequently, he found himself in a hole to where World Color Press said, we're going to take charge of the magazine. We're going to keep it. We're going to take it off you. And he said, no, don't do that. He said, well, you don't do something with to save this magazine, to straighten it out. We're taking the magazine away. And they insisted that he hire Roland Hines. And Roland Hines was the guy who did a whole bunch of magazines, junk magazines, the kind of stuff that you couldn't give me. For example, Modern Bride. Right. Okay. Another magazine was one for can't remember the name. One for girls, 16, 17 years old, and rock stars and stuff like that, and singers, and just all kinds of stuff like that. And consequently, what he would do, he'd get these magazines, and he'd get these photos for free. For example, this magazine's for young girls, all these rock stars. He'd get these photos of these rock groups for free. And he'd take the photos, he'd make photo packages. So you send $5 in to get photos of ABC rock group, and plus shipping and handling. Well, he got the photos for free, and shipping and handling was just, they pay that. So all he did was he did his own ads. All he made these phony companies up, and that's how he made all these magazines. That's what he did for a living. A whole bunch of magazines like that. But he was also very good at cutting corners. One of the first things he did when he came into dirt bike, he says, okay. He says, Dirtbag, he says, I've been looking at what you guys spend. He says, you are now limited to spending no more than 30 rolls of film a month, period.
Okay.
And I said, Roland, I said, that's nothing to in our total budget. 30 rolls of film is nothing. Sometimes we need to shoot more film. That's it. And that's all of a sudden, that's the way it began. All of a sudden, he didn't want to shoot very much. And then we got to the point we just didn't even want to get gas anymore in our trucks and just turn it in because he didn't even want to pay for that. He was the cheapest guy you've ever seen in your life. He was also a very religious guy. Oh. He also he was a part-time minister. Mm-hmm. And he walked in their office one day. He saw all these pictures up on the wall. These girls with their bathing suits on and holding spark plugs and stuff like that. He said, take that filth off the walls. We filth. That's a picture of a girl in a bathing suit holding a spark plug. I won't have that trash. So anyway, one day I got a call from Mike Goodwin. He's putting a race on the Coliseum. And he wants to have a press day down there. And Roland Hines came in and he said, I got the invitation from this Roland Hines, or from Goodman, to come down on press day. I want you to take me down. I want to know, I don't know what to do. I said, oh, okay, no problem whatsoever. So I take him down on press day. And on press day, you could ride around the track and do whatever. And he had all kind of people. But he also had like 10 Playboy bunnies there. The real ones. Genuine Playboy bunnies. Girls that were so perfect. It was not people. And Hines was just about falling out of his pants. I saw him walk into a steel pole, and break his nose when he was looking the wrong way when this girl walked by. Shit, who was up there? But that was the guy. He told us to get our filth off the walls, and he walks into a steel pole. He got to the point though where Paul Clipper just left, and that's it. I can't take it on. And 3 months later, I was on too. So
you were gone 3 months after Hines took over?
No, I was there for a while. The Clipper left first, and that 3 months after Clipper left, he said give me half a year. After 3 months after he left, I left, and that's when I decided to take over. Well, I went to George Elliott, and he used to do a bunch of magazines called, one of them was Popular Cycling, and I was going to take Popular Cycling over. He said, no, we're going to kill Popular Cycling. He said, but we want you to do a magazine called Off Road. I said, I don't know, a Bronco from a Blazer. He said, so what? He said, you're an editor. He says, I'll give you a stack of magazines. You read the magazines. You'll know by the time you're done reading a stack of magazines what the heck to do. So come over and we'll talk it over. So I went to the place, got a whole bunch of magazines. I took them that weekend. I read through 100 magazines. And I said, okay, I went back, cut a deal for $. And all of a sudden I found myself the editor of Off-Road Magazine. And one of the first things I had to do was I had to go cover a race, a Baja 500 race in Ensenada. And I went down there and I saw this race. I said, I can do this. I said, I can do this stuff. Because it struck me as just like motocross, only with more wheels. And so I went ahead and I cut a deal with a guy. These people, good friends of mine, they're an advertising agency for Subaru. And or Isuzu, rather. And anyway, so they had a trooper. And I went out, they wanted me to do a story on the Isuzu racing team. So I went to Riverside, and they had the team out there. They had 4 different trucks, and they had all these racers out there. So I went out there, took photos of things, took photos of the truck, interviewed the racers and everything. And then they let me drive the trucks. Well, I was 7 seconds a lap faster than the fastest rider. 7 seconds a lap faster. Now, not because I ever was ever that great of a truck racer, but because I was a motocross rider, I watched every bump. And all these guys, when these trucks would just hit the bumps, they wouldn't look for the good line. They would just drive to hit this stuff, fighting the truck the whole time. Whereas I would look for every line, every smooth line. It was really easy to go 7 seconds a lap faster. You knew what to look for. So anyway, they went ahead. Their guy went to the next race and didn't do very good. So I cut a deal with them. I was gonna race the Baja 1000 in that Isuzu Tripper, and they said, "Okay, if you win the race, you get $25,000 from us."
Wow.
So I said, "Okay, you got a deal," because back then it was a big deal. So went ahead and we won our class, and instead of giving me $25,000, they said, "You can have the truck." So they gave me the truck, and I got a whole box we had full of spare motors, transmissions, things like that. I eventually sold that because I wanted something more than a trooper, and that's what I built, the big Ole truck. I built that truck and with common fabrications, and raced that thing for 10 years. So I did 10 years of truck racing, and had a lot of fun in that, a lot of work. That's an unbelievable amount of work. If you think working on a bike is difficult, go get a truck. And the work you have to do on a truck is not to be believed.
Hey, Rick, do you need to take a break for just 2 minutes or so, and we can continue on with the interview after that? Do you need to take a break?
I'm okay, fine.
Take a break. I'm going to take one for 2 minutes, 60 seconds. I'll be right back, okay?
You got it, buddy. Right.
All right, you going to? Okay, we'll be right back. What? Are you listening to it? All right, I'm back. We're waiting for Rick Sieman to come back. I want to thank everybody for joining us this afternoon. Mike McAtee, Ed Zorns, and Scott Hybrink was with us a little bit earlier. And we're going to continue on for just a couple. Well, we're going to continue on for as long as we have to with our guest, Rick Super Hunky Sieman. Rick, welcome back.
Thank you.
You know, you were a public figure, obviously, between all the magazines you worked for, all the races you attended, all the people that you knew, like Mike Goodwin. And throughout that, you took on, well, I don't know if you were pulled into this cause, but you wound up in the middle of a couple of controversial things with the AMA, with the Bureau of Land Management. In fact, when it comes to the Bureau of Land Management, I think you were in federal court more than John Gotti, if I'm not mistaken. But I do want to talk about those things, and I know they could be very, very lengthy. You can take all the time you like. Of course, there was the Sahara Club, the Sierra Club, and all those different things. So, how exactly did you? Let's talk about the BLM first. How exactly did the Bureau of Land Management and you butt heads? What happened with Lou McKee, the Phantom Duck, and stuff like that? Walk us through that if you can.
What happened was this: the Barstow to Vegas race
Yep.
became a huge, huge event. At the last race they had legally was 3,500 entrants.
Wow.
Yeah, 3,500 people entered the race, and the BLM couldn't stand that. Oh no, that many people had that much fun. And the funny thing was, they said it was sensitive land. Well, if you know what the course is like, and I saw a course map, a whole lot of the course runs right alongside the freeway between Barstow and Vegas. I mean, you can go 100 yards off to the side. There's a freeway. There's trucks going on a freeway, and there you are 100 yards on a dirt road, and no big deal. Anyway,
Right.
so they decided they were going to kill the race. Well, the Phantom Duck, Louis McKee, decided he was going to go ahead and have a ride anyway with some friends. So he went out on the weekend, and they sent him some papers. They were going to take him to jail. And that's when he came over to me and was going, he wondered what the heck was happening. Well, a little bit about the Phantom Duck. The guy's name is Louis McKee. He's an electrician. Yeah. And he is the kind of a guy who would never, ever give up. He had a daughter who was a pretty bad girl, and she used to take his checks and cash his checks $30, $40, $50. And he told her not to take any more checks. She said she wouldn't, so we did. Finally, he went to the bank and said, I want you not to cash any more checks unless directly from me. Mm-hmm. So they wanted, she goes to the bank and cashes another check for $30. And he goes to the bank, he talks to the president. He says, what's the deal? I told you not to cash any more checks. He said, we're just too busy. He said, well, make good on it. I said, we can't do it. So what he did, he called up all the TV stations in town, all the radio stations, all newspapers. He says, there's a huge meeting down right in front of the bank here, the Bank of America. He said, a huge, huge meeting. There was nobody there, of course, but all these people, they called him up, and they all showed up. And he was there, and they went, what's the deal? And first thing you know, there were 60 people out front, 70 people, trying to figure what the hell is happening. And the manager of the bank comes out, and he says, what's the deal? He says, they're stealing my money. They said, what? And people start poking cameras at him and doing whatever. And the guy said, whoa, we're going to pay the guy back. And he gave Louis McKee a check. And it went, and McKee says, I won't cash a check without 2 forms of ID. And just, that's the kind of guy he was. So that's Louis McKee. Anyway, he came to me, he said, you help me out, will you? I thought that was very cool. So I decided I'd help him out. And we got a lawyer, and the lawyer was a guy who wrote Hodaka, Ellen Gullub. And he went with us, and for years, we fought the Bureau of Land Management. And we did our own trail rides, and we kept winning case after case after case. And the BLM didn't know what to do. They absolutely did not know what to do with us. They didn't have a clue. And we got to the point one time right before Davey went to court. I had an attorney from the BLM come up to us, and they showed up that day with 13 attorneys, 102 witnesses against us. And me and the Duck were sitting there going, whoa, this is pretty serious stuff. So he comes up to us, he says, if you agree not to ride in the desert anymore on your motorcycles, we'll drop all charges against you. If you don't agree, we're going to take it. We're going to crush you guys. That's who we had to fight. So it was no fun fighting the BLM. But so eventually, in the very last case, the Judge Warren J. Ferguson, he turns to both of us, people. He brings us to the front, the attorneys, and he calls us to the front. He says, "This is going on way too long." He says, "This is absolute baloney." He says, "I insist, I demand right now that you come to a settlement." He says, "Or I'm going to make a decision." He says, "Therefore, you go to a neutral room in this building, and you come to a decision. And I don't want to see you back in this courtroom again." So we go to this neutral room. The neutral room was the FBI offices. So me and Duck and the attorney are sitting there, and we're talking, and they won't go anywhere. They just simply won't go anywhere. The BLM won't give an inch. So we go back to the front of the judge. He says, "So, okay." He says, "I'll tell you what." He says, "I'm going to find you guilty." And I turned to Duck and said, "Oh, we're screwed, man. We're screwed." He said, you're guilty." He says, "You get $850 fine." I said, "What?" And we had the money, see, because people sent money to the magazine. So we had the money, no sweat. Yeah, no sweat. And the BLM went crazy. They said, $850 fine. We're asking for $500,000 each one. So 15 years in jail plus this and that. And he said, "No, $850 and the case is closed." Is that clear? And that was
that.
That was that.
So
that was that.
Did a Barstow to Vegas race ever take place again after that, or that was it? It was over.
Never took place. What we did, we were able to ride the place. We're able to ride the event with less than 50 people legally, according to the judge. But never had the race itself again.
How many times did you actually go to court with BLM? Like 7 times?
7 times. Every time it cost us a fortune. A fortune.
Now, in your book, I was reading that you did approach the American Motorcycle Association, the AMA, to get some backing from them because they are the group that supposedly fights for riders to have areas to ride. How did the AMA, did they help you along the way? Did they get involved?
The AMA not only wouldn't help us, said, "Please don't bother us ever again. We want nothing to do with you." And we got all done. We got all done with this thing. They said Honda specifically said to them, "We wish you would just go away." When we got all done with this, with all our stuff, with the BLM, we went to the AMA. I said, "We'd like to let you have all of the paperwork, the aerial photos, the maps, all the paperwork from both sides.
Yeah.
It's all yours. If you want to fight the BLM ever again, you have all this free." So they said, "We can't take anything from you guys. We can't touch anything, have anything to do with you. Nothing to do with this." Wow.
Why wouldn't they get involved? I mean, they do fight for your area to ride. Why wouldn't they?
Because Honda didn't like us making noise, and Honda controlled the AMA.
Oh, whoa. Did you just say that Honda controls the AMA?
I said that Honda controlled the AMA.
Does that, you believe that today too, Rick?
Absolutely, I believe it. No question about it. The people who gave the most money to the AMA for their existence was Honda, Yamaha, and Suzuki. Honda gave the most money. That I know is a fact. Now,
your battle was quite a few years ago, so you're saying that this has been going on for decades.
I have no idea for the last 10 years or so, but back then, I knew that's what happened back then. Today, who knows what's happened.
Oh, okay. I mean, it's a pretty bold statement, and it's coming from a guy who was actually there on the front line. So
I was right there, man. I know what it's like.
Well, so let's switch back to your racing career for a moment, Rick. A while ago, you told me a great story about you and John DeSoto, where you lined up for a race and I don't know, you had a bike that wasn't so fast and you had to line up a certain way. So you're asking John DeSoto, how do you get a good start? What happened with that?
Well, this is very good. this is my days with John are great, but this one happened. It was amazing. Hopetown was a race my club put on. Dirt Diggers
Okay.
their club. Whole town was
Yeah.
a big deal. We have 50,000 people a day for 2 days show up for that. I mean, 50,000 people a day, and the Europeans show up for it too. And they had all the different classes too, and seniors and everything. And I was sitting on the start line. I got to race. I was allowed to race in the in the class in the hometown race because I was in the top 10 in District 37 point standings. But you're not allowed to race in that race unless you're in the top, somewhere in the top 10. And
Okay.
I was number 4 in a 500 $500 class. Okay, so I got to race, but because I was in a club, you couldn't start anywhere but the last row. They didn't want to show your favoritism, so we had to start in the last row. So here I am sitting here, 130 yards in front of me is the start. I'm in the last row. I'm going, Jesus, 100 people here. I'm in the last row. This is wonderful. So about that time, John DeSoto walks over to me. He's still got his clothes on because he's not racing until later in the day. He says, "Hey, Rick, how you doing?" I said, "I'm not doing real great." I said, "Look where I'm at." I said, "Oh, that's no problem whatsoever." I said, "What do you mean no problem whatsoever?" He said, "Look," he said, "Rick, who are the stupidest racers out here?" I said, "Well, novices." He says, "Yeah." He said, "You have 99 novices out there are stupid." He says, "You're one of them. You're 100. You're stupid. You're not quite as stupid as I am, but they're by and large they are the stupidest racers." He says, "What are the stupidest bikes a novice can race?" I says, 500 bikes. He says, "Absolutely. They're 500 novices. They're stupid riders on stupid bikes." I said, "Okay. Now what?" He says, "Therefore, I'm going to tell you what to do." He says, "When I tell you what to do, he says, you're going to pull a hole shot." "I'm going to pull a hole shot?" He says, "Yeah." "Okay, John, what am I going to do?" He says, "You're going to go 130 yards. There's a real tight left-hand turn, really tight left-hand turn." He said, "Yeah." He said, "What's going to happen to the left-hand turn?" I said, "They're going to turn left." He says, "They're all going to turn left." He said, "They're all going to try to go to the inside, right?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "That's why they're stupid. They're all going to go to the inside." He said, "You mean they're all going to go to the inside?" He says, "Yeah." He says, "I'll guarantee you." He said, I watched the start. I don't know how many races. He said, "Every time I go, novices start, they all go to the inside." He said, "You go outside, go 40, 50 feet away on the right side where nobody else is at. And you just go out there and stay out there. You'll be a gear higher." I said, "You're kidding." He said, "No, do what I tell you. When it's immediately, when the flag drops, 10 rows of 10 people, he said, you go to the right side immediately and way to the right where nobody else is at. And you stay out there. And when you go to the first turn, you stay out to the right side." So sure enough, man, the flag drops. He said, "Oh, by the way," he says, "if you don't come around in the top 5, he says, I'm going to get you with a mud ball." I said, "What?" So he reaches down and the wet dirt. It makes a snowball out of mud.
Yeah.
He said, "You come around or you get this mud ball." I said, "Oh, man." So anyway, the flag drops. I go way to the right, and I go to everybody goes to the left-hand turn. They go inside. I'm 40 feet away from everybody, and I'm in 4th gear, and they're all in 1st and 2nd gear, and they all piled up. One top bike on top of another bikes on top, bikes everywhere, and just a mess, unbelievable mess. And I go right after that turn was a straightaway, a long straightaway, and I had the 450 Mako, and I go down the straightaway. By the end of the straightaway, I had the lead. I came around and get into the first lap, and John Soto standing there, goes, gives me a big thumbs up, drops the ball like that. Gives me a big double thumbs up.
Great story. Hey, Rick, I would like to know, and boy, I'm anticipating some of the answers that you're going to say to this. What do you think of today's 4-stroke bikes, Supercross, the outdoor series? Do you follow it? And what are some of your thoughts on that?
Well, here's my thoughts. Back when I started racing,
Yeah.
it became a very easy thing to do.
Uh-huh.
It was very affordable. You could buy a brand new bike, brand new, for under $1,000. You could buy a used one a good, decent used for $300 or $400. Okay,
Yeah.
you can go have fun racing. Do you know what a brand new 450 Honda costs nowadays? A brand new 450 Honda Racer is $13,000. $13,000. Guess what it turns the RPM at? It turns the RPM. It turns at 13,500 RPM. All right, that's what makes the horsepower. In the Honda manual, it says 30 hours of operation, you're ready for a rebuild. 30 hours of operation. Now, I used to have my 490 Mako. I could go out in the garage on Saturday night and spend 2 or 3 hours, and I could do a top end job. No problem. No big deal. You know, $30, $40 for a piston, $10, $12 for a set of rings, and go racing the next day. Have fun. They have made racing ridiculous now. A decent used bike, a decent used four-stroke is $5,000 to $7,000 used. A new one, $13,000. Now that is completely out of control. It makes it for a person, unless they got some real reason to race. Why should they? Seriously.
Yeah. Well, but don't you think the times have changed with with the cost of living and the amount people make?
I think dollar wise alone, and also inability to work on it. For example, I take my Mako, like I said, in 2 or 3 hours I do a top end job.
Right.
You want to try to do a top end job on a new 450 Honda 4-stroke? Excuse me. You better have your stuff together. You better know a whole lot more than most people will ever even think about knowing.
Right. Otherwise, they're going to go to a dealer, and what's a dealer going to charge them for a top end? Quite a bit.
Top end, just the head alone. And when you do a rebuild on a Honda 450, the head alone is $938. That's a no valve springs, no valves. So that's the head alone, and it must be replaced during a rebuild. So you're talking to do a rebuild, like $3,000 for a rebuild after 30 hours of operation. Excuse the hell out of me.
Yeah. Now, Rick,
it doesn't make any sense.
You were there early on, Super Bowl of motocross, the early years of Supercross. What do you think about the indoor events now? The tracks. What do you think about that? Should it change? Should they make it different? What should be done there? Or is it just the times we're living in, and this is what we're always going to see?
Well, example, I broke my back in 1979 at the Super Bowl of motocross.
Yeah.
Press day. It was a 93-foot jump. I went 92 feet encased. Broke the foot pegs off the bike and everything. And it was no fun. But I also, six months later, I raced again. I tried some more Supercross racing. And I remember going over a double jump, just I think a 60-footer, no big deal. But they're down in the hole. But the guy was jumping over. I didn't realize there was a guy in a hole, coming out of the hole. And he came up, I just missed him. I went, what is this? This is not right. This just ain't right. What's happening to these guys? To have a track like this, to have things like that happen, it doesn't make sense. Back when we raced normal motocross, if you did something stupid, or you did too fast, you fell down, no big deal. But nowadays, with all these jumps, it's a jump-a-thon. It's not even motocross anymore. It's not even motocross.
We talked about the AMA a little bit earlier, and they seem to have a grip on all this four-stroke business in the Supercross and in the outdoor series. They say they're just making bikes that are more eco-friendly and so on and so forth. But do you think the four strokes in Supercross, why does that have to be a rule? Why couldn't a guy go out there on a good two-stroke?
Because a good two-stroke does emit a whole lot of particles. The AMA fell subject to what the Eco Freaks said. The Eco Freaks demanded a cleaner running motorcycle.
Yeah, but it's a closed circuit course. They shouldn't be having anything to do with the EPA.
They did. The Eco Freaks leaned on them, and AMA just buckled under. They just completely buckle leather. That's the typical way they do them.
Okay.
See, for example, I'm in the Hot Shoe Hall of Fame.
Yes, you are. That's where I met you. I saw you there back in January.
Guess what? I've been indicted into the AMA Hall of Fame 15 times by different people, never once. Why is that? Because Rick Sieman said stuff against the AMA that shouldn't have been said, according to the AMA.
Yeah.
AMA they're not very friendly people, shall I say.
Okay. Well, let's get back to something we both know a little bit more about. What do you think about the future of vintage motocross? And I know you've tried it a few times. Do you enjoy it?
Yeah, I raced vintage up until about a year ago. And my legs are pretty well shot. 1,562 races. But I think vintage racing is a lot of fun, a whole lot of fun. I really genuinely love it and enjoy it. In fact, if you go out to a vintage race nowadays, it's very, very easy to see 300 people on starting lines.
Yeah.
And you're not going to see that many people on a regular normal race day. The vintage classes are doing quite well. The vintage races are doing quite well. And the other racing, no. The other racing, try to go to a normal race and find more than, say, 60 people.
Yeah.
Very hard to do. You won't see that in a vintage race.
Well, Rick, let's talk about your personal life a little bit. Are you married? Have you been married more than once? Scott Hybring told me to ask you a question, but I'm not so sure I should bring it up.
Yeah, I was married 3 times. And,
you were married 3 times?
Yep. And
okay.
My current wife, I met in Mexico. I lived there for 20 years.
Uh-huh.
And, her name is Tina, and we've been married over 20 years. And she's a good lady. She's a damn good lady.
That's good. Now, the first 2 times were 2 different women, or you married the same woman twice?
Married the same woman twice.
Oh, okay.
First one twice, and that didn't quite work out. We tried, but didn't quite work out.
Do you have kids, Rick?
Yeah, I had 2 kids.
Boys, girls?
My son Ricky and my daughter Cindy. My daughter Cindy is a scuba teacher. She teaches scuba diving. She has a company called Cindy's Scuba, and she does unbelievable amount of work. Unbelievable. And she also teaches in her spare time skydiving. So she does both.
Okay.
She used to race mini bikes. She was like 6 years old. So she's pretty darn. She's 53 years old.
What about grandchildren? You got any grandchildren from those guys?
Yeah, she's just one.
Just one.
Yeah.
All right. So, Rick, the other big question, of course, other than everybody wanting to know how you got the name Super Hunky is, whatever happened to the great dirt bike truck, the great yellow dirt bike truck? When was the last time you saw that?
There's a guy named Brad Zimmerman. He used to work for magazines.
Sure.
And he had an El Camino, and mine was smoking so badly that I used to carry a gas can in the back of the truck. So when the cops would pull me over, they give me a ticket for smoking. I'd say, "Oh, I just ran out of gas, and I had a pork 2-stroke mixed in it," so they let me go. So anyway, it got so bad, it had like 400,000 miles on it. So I decided to trade it I put it up for sale, and Zimmerman said, "I'll trade you for 400 Suzuki." I went, okay. Remember the first 400 Suzuki, the bad one? That's what he had. And we traded it for that. And he he took the truck and took on down the street. And I looked at the Suzuki and realized that I got screwed. So who knows? Right now, probably it's made to a cigarette lighter somewhere in Japan.
Probably. You know what, Rick? There is one more story, and I wanted to ask you to tell it because I found it not only in your book, Monkey Butt, but oddly enough, when I was doing some research, I picked up this old 1973 dirt bike magazine, and these 2 publications were written decades apart, but it was a story about you and Nate Shakwa pulling a trailer that he built, and it was extremely heavy. And you guys had some dirt bikes on the back of it, and he lost control. The bikes flew off, And you couldn't find one bike. Do you remember where that bike was and what happened?
Yeah. What happened was this. Nate was the worst welder in the world. Whenever every weld it looked like a payday bar. I mean, it was really bad. And consequently, he'd get a trailer and it wouldn't live. So he decided to build his own. So he'd find sheets of steel and weld them all together. In his trailer, he got done with it. It weighed more than a car. It weighed over 4,000 pounds. So we put the bikes on the back of the trailer. And by the time we did that, the trailer and the car weighed twice as much as the car. So here we'd be going down to the track in his van with the two bikes in the back. And he'd go through a corner, but he wouldn't go through a corner slowly. Oh, no. He'd go through it so fast that the trailer would start swinging out, going sideways. The trailer would start swinging out. And consequently, what happened was the thing broke loose and the trailer went off into the trees. It flew into the trees. The bike flew into the trees. And we had to hunt for about 20 minutes to find my Yamaha stuck up in a tree. And we finally got the thing out of the tree. And just about the time we got out of the tree, this guy comes up with a shotgun. He says, "This your bike?" He says, "Yeah." He says, "Give me $20. You can't have it back. Can't have it back." So he paid me $20 and we took our bike out of the tree. So we were on his land.
Rick Sieman, I want to thank you for taking time to speak with me today. I'm sure we could go on and on a whole lot longer with so many stories. The author of Monkey Butt, this should be on everybody's bookshelf if you consider yourself a serious motocrosser. The editor and really the creator of Dirt Bike Magazine, an all-around legendary guy, Rick Super Hunky Sieman. Rick, thanks for taking the time to speak to me today.
Thank you much.
I'll see you this year at the Hot Shoe Hall of Fame. I hope we're somewhere on the trail.
You got me. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick.
Bye.
My guest today has been Rick Sieman, and it's all been made possible with the help of our sponsors, Vintco, Keep the Ride Going, Motion Pro for all your specialized tools, cables, and controls, Full Circle Racing, Preston Petty Products, The Legend Continues, Golan Products, Racer X Magazine, and of course, Northwest Mako CZ. Be sure to join me this Wednesday night at 6 p.m. for another edition of Vintage Motocross Q&A on Facebook. I want to thank my guest again, Rick Sieman, and thank you all for watching today. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you next time on Vintage Motocross Radio.